We all came in here in silence for the first half hour. And I thought that silence, we were introducing ourselves to each other. And it was very powerful. I was thinking how unique it is that people get together and they just sit in silence. Because ordinarily when we come, we're full of all the news and all the details and our introduction. And just to sit together in silence and to really discover what is the true introduction to ourselves is the same introduction as to every person to themselves. So how I know myself, which is to introduce myself to myself, I will discover the exact same self that you will discover in discovering or have discovered in yourself. And how curious that is, that what we discover in ourself is so much deeper than just all that introduction. It is so beyond introduction. It is the knowing. Once the introductions have been said, what is left? The knowing, the deeper knowing, you could say. As you know, all of you, that Mayank and I just returned from India, along with many of you who are here too. And I was thinking this morning in terms of you all coming and what would I like to say? And I thought, well, I want to say something about being in India. It feels like strange if I was to say nothing. And again, I thought, well, although it's lovely to talk all the details, the introduction of what happened in India, I thought I wanted to spend the time to talk about something more essential or more subtle. What is it that I love about India? What is it that many of us love about India? And it's not the place, although that has a certain magic for sure, but it's not India as opposed to New Zealand or East opposed to the West, Western culture and Eastern culture. There is a tradition in India, and a very ancient tradition, that has really continued very strongly. Meditation, yoga, and contemplative thinking that has really continued, that is to come to know what is the more subtle, what is the unseen. What we speak very often when we first say hi and meet each other is all the stuff that we see, all the stuff that we experienced, all the stuff we did. But when we get to know each other more, as you know, with your own loved ones, you become more silent. Maybe when you meet them after a long day, you give some story, oh, this happened to me today. But even those who are in partnerships at nighttime, what are you? Silent. And that's what India has, I think, opened to many of us and all of us through this teaching. So it's not, as I said, the place, that there is a yogic tradition that includes satsang, the contemplation and study of who we are as human beings and what are our ways that we can arrive at freedom and peace, and alongside that with meditation. And that really does lead our attention to something more subtle, something unseen, something that is not of the happenings of the day. And that's where there is so much beauty and so much stillness that comes in your own nervous system. And in the yogic tradition in India, as many of you know, there are 4 main, what are described as paths, or you could say focus of attention. And there are 4 main paths of yoga. Hatha yoga, which more people in the West are familiar with, which is the study of the body with its subtle energies and how we can maneuver those subtle energies or master those subtle energies in such a way that can lead us to a stiller, more peaceful state of being. The second path of yoga is Gyaan yoga, and Gyaan means self-study or self-knowing. Not the self that is introduced at dinner parties, not that self. The self that I was saying, that is the self that has not been bound or has not been able to be described and thereby limited by our experiences. What is that inner self that, as I said initially, is the same self that I will discover as you have discovered? What is that self? The Gyaan, the knowledge, is the inquiry, how to use the mind in the study to reflect upon that. That although we have different experiences, underlying that experience, every being, for example, is wanting to be accepted. Amongst differences, we all want acceptance. We all want that sense to be safe, to be loved, to be cherished, to be something valuable, not just to be discarded as worthless. And so the study of Gyaan, the study of this understanding ourselves on all levels, mentally, emotionally, egoically, how are we as these ego beings that defend ourselves and get ourselves all tied up in knots of somehow trying to find self-worth through all the things we do rather than that which we are at the more subtle level. So Hatha yoga, Gyaan yoga, Bhakti yoga, which is often described as devotion. But this word devotion needs clarification because although it is represented, and we have representations of an image of devotion through our guru or through certain other images, maybe certain deities, statues, for example. This is more kind of decorative in a certain way. It's my aesthetic choice. But really, what is the devotion is the dissolving of our ego, our own sense of isolation and the defense that we put up to create this isolation and separateness between us. Where can that dissolve, surrender? Not surrender as in I am small, you are big, but where can that ice melt? And that melting is described as bhakti. And the revelation of the bhakti, of the devotion, is that there is no separation, actually, between who I am as a person, body, mind, story, history, likes and dislikes, and what that deeper person is that has never been bound in that story, has never been bound in my likings and dislikings, that is so essentially free. Can I surrender to that in myself? So surrender is not to other. But surrender is surrendering our own separateness to ourselves. And lastly, the fourth path of yoga, karma. Karma yoga. Karma means action. So now, having our mind more reflective, going more inwardly to examine ourselves at the deeper level, and having developed some mastery of how to handle these vehicles physically and energetically, having developed or mastered to whatever degree an ability to sit in silence in meditation and allow that dissolving of our story to ourselves, having now been able to be with these three paths, the fourth path is now, how can we now make that transition or that amazing, I can't say next stage, that is what came to my mind. It's not the next stage because they're all interweaved together, but that integration, that's better. The integration now, that it's not only when I'm sitting quietly that I feel more in touch with myself at that deeper level, at the level that really is ever free, ever pure, ever present. But now the body is moving, the mind is acting, I'm speaking, I'm hearing, I'm interacting, I'm making decisions. How is it now that my practice is not now, oh, that's something I do outside of my work? How do we integrate all that which our practice is from the first three parts into our work, into our state of action, and particularly with interaction? How do we interact with each other? Just to say, how do we get along with each other? How do we live with each other? How do I also not create division between my work and my leisure time? Why is it that my work has become burdensome and I just look forward to the holiday time? But how do we bring it all together? How does it work for us? That's karma yoga. How does it work for us? Otherwise, it's just a philosophy, you know? We could all go with the amount of knowledge that we have, all of us, I'm sure. We could go into a third year or even master year at university in Advaita Vedanta and manage very easily the study. Is it just to study for study's sake? Most of you have been coming to the satsangs for years now. This knowledge is very familiar to you. But are we just studying to get some certificate? We're studying so that it works for us, so that we can integrate it in our lives. And that's really the very, very difficult work. A lot of appreciation to all of you who keep coming, because you're the ones who don't just come for an experience of the day, although the day is an experience, but you've come because you want to make deeper shifts in your life and the way that you are with yourself and the way that you are with everyone and how you are to live in a state of freedom and peace. That's why we've all come. And we know it's not just one weekend. That's why we see each other again and again and again, not because you're slow to pick it up. Not at all. I'm also not slow to pick it up, but I'm still doing it because that's the integration of karma yoga. Fleur, who's here from Palmerston North, she wrote me a letter yesterday, and I love that. And she said that in her meditation, she had an experience of seeing the blue-black space. And in the middle of that blue-black space, she saw a center, let's say. She called it an eye, E-Y-E, eye. And I thought, very nice. Yeah, I see that too. And then she went on to describe certain other images that she saw, because what is happening in the other images that she saw, which were more form, much more form, like a cat eye and eyelashes and certain things like that. Mm-hmm. The mind now comes in to interpret what is pure perception. Even the idea of calling it blue-black is still the mind describing pure perception. So I wanted to talk a little today in response to Fleur's question about the third eye. What does it mean, the third eye? And this is the study of Hatha yoga. Hatha are two words, ha and ta, meaning the sun and the moon, or heating and cooling energies of the body. If we can find in Hatha yoga, and that also includes pranayam, working with the breath, also includes meditation, also includes using our own body, particularly the hands, to guide the energies of ha and ta, right and left, which is also symbolic of division, to separate things. How do we ha, ta, bring them together? And even this mudra, the prayer mudra, is a symbol of that, where two sides come together. I am one, and we are one. This body functions perfectly in a state of division. We have hunger, and we eat, we digest, and we rest. And this cycle is constantly being balanced and arranged in the body. All the systems have a homeostatic function, balancing two energies. When we get thirsty, the body sends signals, you need to drink. When we've drunk enough, the body sends the signals, stop drinking. That's just a very simplified version, but this homeostasis is a constant movement left and right. And of course, simply said, the heating and cooling systems are the same. Now, this is mostly what a human being without this knowledge of yoga in all its 4 stages lives a dimension which is mostly of the first chakra, just existing, just staying alive, just keeping the body from dying and keeping it fed, keeping it out of danger. Everyone exists on that level. Some people are more towards the emotional side. Some people, I don't know if you ever met them, we don't encounter them very often, who absolutely can't access any emotional state at all. Their existence is just physical. I think maybe in India you meet certain characters because you see such a wide range of characters that are more out in the open, so to speak. But then, of course, emotions develop, mind develops, intellect develops. But at a certain point, someone starts to break that ceiling of what is normally experienced in a human being. For reasons I've never been able to discover, and I've realized also don't need to be explained, but there's some that come out like the lotus. They rise up out of the water. So for whatever reason, something sprouted in our mind. I got to go to satsang, or I've got to meditate, or I want to discover something deeper. This is the opening of the third eye. All of our eyes, our third eyes, have been opened. And that is the ability to see the subtle, to see the unseen. And this takes me back to what I was saying about India, why I love India, is because of that tradition of seeing that which is not defined by physical and material science. It is the science of the unseen, the science of the subtle. And you need that third eye open to perceive the unseen. It is pure perception. That's the third eye. So what you are seeing is irrelevant. That's why Fleur said, I'm seeing the blue-black, and then I'm seeing a cat's eye, and I'm seeing this and that. But what is really her study? Who is the seer? What is seen will always be interpreted by the mind in the field of materiality as a thing. I'm seeing a thing. And although there's been amazing privileges and things have become easier in one regard, at least physically, with the study of matter and advances that have been made there, but at the expense of our spiritual health, our inner health that has disregarded the science of the seer. Because if it can't be measured, and it can't be seen, and it can't be weighed, and it can't be somehow put under a microscope, there can be no evidence, physical evidence of it. It cannot exist. And that's what's alive still, that tradition. And I'm not saying it's only in India, it's here too. And that's why we've come back, because it's alive everywhere if you just put your attention there. It's only that India put a lot of attention there and kept it alive. It will be interesting to see where India goes also. Not that I want this to get into politics, but just very briefly. because there's a massive shift towards wanting all that materiality, of wanting to be a world leader in nuclear power and in economics and in advancements in improving roads and infrastructure and business. So there's a massive movement towards that because they felt the spiritual knowledge made them weak in regard to the more material knowledge in the West. But at the same time that there's a move to materiality and the hope for it or want from it, there's also awakening of many Indians to realize the value of their own tradition, because they're looking and saying, hey, Westerners are liking this. And they're coming to our country and making money on this tradition that is our tradition. Something's a bit wrong here. Maybe we should have paid attention. So who knows where that balance will go. But how do we now, all of us, having opened to the power of knowing ourselves as the seer that has no form, is pure perception. What we do, we return to the basic knowledge and the unfolding of the mastery of how do we now make that a living knowledge. How do we balance this body? How do we know when to rest, when to act? How do we balance the mind? That we know what is the garbage story that goes on and on based on our previous experiences that we just trash out. And really, it is trashy. We know it. That story that doesn't serve us anymore. That, yeah, we were helpless at one stage to take up that narrative, me against them, or them against us, or I am small, or they are great, or I am great and they are small, or all those combinations, and we're confused as to what it is. Am I great or am I small? Because sometimes I think I'm greater than, sometimes I think I'm smaller than. I'm just completely confused. We need not be confused if we know how to balance the ha and the ta. Thoughts. A thought is just energy, it's heat. When to turn up the heat in our mind, when to really make a good study, when to be really discerning, when to be also assertive and speak out for ourselves. I really appreciate your invitation, but I need to stay home, meditate, when to use your voice, when to apply, and when also to be a little cool. We have to have this knowledge. We're dealing with our own mechanism here. And that's what has become confused. The seer has become identified with the mechanism. So what happens when we can balance our body? And I'm not saying perfectly to get obsessed with it, but just know what it is and balance the emotions. So we're not always in high drama and charged emotions, or like fiery anger every time something doesn't go my way. That can we balance things a little? Hatha Yoga has that beautiful chakra system. That there is a channel right at the center, from the base of the spine to our third eye. And it is called the Sushumna channel, which basically means our subtle potential. Every human being has the potential to know the subtle. But in order to know the subtle, in order to know the seer, we have to have some kind of knowledge of how to balance the body, the emotions, and the mind, and the intellect, and how to allow the ego to surrender a little. So in order for the seer, we need all these four paths: Hatha, Gyaan, Bhakti, and Karma. They all need to work together. In that, when the seer can open, or when the seer can become unmixed from what is seen and known, including our own mechanism, then the seventh chakra opens in that revelation, in that realization. And that is the union. That is what is called yoga. whether it's Hatha, Gyaan, Bhakti, or Karma. It's all yoga. It's all to lead to unity. That this vessel hasn't divided or blocked off or separated me from the everything. It's a big revelation. And we all have opened that potential and that perception and that seer. And the satsang is to remind ourselves again and again and again, right, that's my purpose. That's my real purpose. Of course, I have many purposes. We have the purpose of the things that we do and to take care of the people we love. We have all of those things alongside of it, but not at the expense of our original purpose. Because that's, I think, is the one thing that does get sidelined again and again and again. Because it is not easily supported in our societies. And I'm not blaming the society, knowing that we've created, along with all of us, not just me and my aunt. We have all created this satsang community. And look, I've come back and you're all still here. It's amazing. And we come together again and again. So that's what I was thinking today. What were you thinking?
It's amazing that you came back.
I'm very, very happy to be back and to see you all.